name is Maureen Rudolph. For my Hot Topic blog, I chose graphic novels and how they can be used as teaching tools. I've never been one to read graphic novels myself. The format's never been one that has appealed to me. However, when I noticed in our syllabus that we had a couple of weeks coming up where we had to read graphic novels for our required reading, I wondered if they had some value beyond simply enjoyment for the reader. And I was surprised actually and a bit excited about that as well because I found that they are. I found some articles that noted that educators agree that graphic novels can be useful for teaching vocabulary, visual literacy, reading skills. They rely heavily on allusion, satire, irony, and parody to make a point. And these are definitely terms and terminology that students can benefit from learning from, especially young adult readers. For weaker readers, I found in looking at some of the articles that graphic novels have many benefits. Less text on the page means less decoding for those weaker readers, which means the reading itself becomes less daunting. And the pictures help with the visual effects of understanding the content as well. For reluctant readers or ESL students, graphic novels, some educators have found, have been very helpful for those particular types of students. They can increase reading comprehension, vocabulary. It presents complex material in a more readable format for those students, and it can serve as a bridge between low readers and high readers. For strong readers, some educators have also agreed that those graphic novels can also be helpful for them. They offer a different type of reading experience, maybe something different they've never been exposed to before. They can help develop analytical and critical thinking skills as well. What I found very interesting too is that I've discovered that you can use graphic novels to help teach students in many subject areas such as English, history, global studies, and current events. For the subject of English, one interesting aspect is that the graphic novel can be a bridge to classical literature. I was an English major in college, so I was extremely excited to learn that there are actually graphic novels out there for the Odyssey, and I actually took them out of the library just to show you quickly. So here's a graphic novel for the Odyssey. It's very long, but so is the Odyssey. However, the pictures in here are really good. They're very detailed. The information, some of it is a little bit violent, so definitely it seems, and I found on a couple of these, that some of the pictures can be quite brutal and violent. So for young adult readers, it seems is more appropriate than younger readers. Whereas I guess if you took a classical literature book and you didn't have a graphic novel to go with it and you read the book itself, you could probably visualize in your head the violence, where here it's obviously depicted in pictures. But the text and the information itself is less daunting to read than the Odyssey itself is. They actually have a graphic novel for Beowulf, which I was surprised to find as well. Again, there are very violent images, but the story of Beowulf, they actually have in graphic novel format, which I could not believe. I was completely surprised. They also have a series of books called No Fear Shakespeare, which includes Macbeth, Hamlet, and Romeo and Juliet. I took out Romeo and Juliet. Again, graphic novels. Shakespeare is very complicated to understand, and I think for many readers can be very daunting. What is amazing here is that you can start with something like this, a graphic novel, and bridge it toward the more complicated text itself. So these are just some examples for English. I found also that there was a series called Graphic Classics, and it's a comic book anthology series put out by Eureka Productions in Wisconsin. They have adaptations for authors such as Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women, Edgar Allan Poe, Arthur Conan Doyle. So I found that very interesting as well. For the subject of history, graphic novels can provide a visual historical record, can present historical events in a more accessible format where the students can actually see in their minds the historical event happening. For example, there is such a book called Gettysburg, which I have right here, which can go along with a a lecture on Abraham Lincoln. This is a graphic novel about the Battle of Gettysburg. And again, I found that the pictures and the way that it's written can really sink in for students, and it might be a way for them to actually visualize what's going on and to really retain the information as well. It makes it so much more interesting than a general lesson, say, on Gettysburg and Abraham Lincoln. Having this as a supplemental read, I think, may be very beneficial. For global studies also, I found they had a book such as here, Degratias, A Tale of Rwanda, and it's about a boy in Rwanda, again, another graphic novel right before the genocide of Rwanda. So I found that very interesting as well for global studies aspect. There is a book called The Cartoon History of the Universe. There are 3 volumes. This is volume 3. And this sort of reminded me of the Billy Joel song, We Didn't Start the Fire, which quickly moves you through decades and decades of history. This is a little bit more extensive than the song, but for instance, this volume number 3 goes into the Crusades. It talks about the Ottoman Empire, so I thought that was interesting. And finally, what I found for current events, one example would be the 9/11 Commission Report. Now, as we all know, the 9/11 Commission Report is very big, and I'm sure rarely any adults, let alone students, have actually read it. There is actually a graphic novel based on the final 9/11 report that really talks about 9/11 from before the actual event happened to actually what happened afterwards. So I found that very interesting. So I have to say, before I started this research, I had no idea the types of graphic novels that are out there. I just assumed wrongly that most of them were fiction, and I was surprised by the number of non-fiction type of graphic novels that are out there that can really be supplemental to teaching students. So I hope you found this as interesting as I did. Thank you.